The shepherd's gambit, the morning mist clung to the golden wheat fields of Kepler, 442 be like a protective blanket, but Marcus Holloway knew it wouldn't hide them for long. At 68 years old, his weathered hands still moved with practiced precision as he adjusted the farming equipment, though his mind was focused on something far more dangerous than the harvest. The colony of New Eden had been peaceful for 3 years. Families had built homes among the rolling hills, children played in the crystal-clear streams, and the biggest worry most settlers had was whether the grain would mature before the winter storms arrived. Marcus had chosen this quiet life deliberately, trading his former existence for the simple rhythm of planting and harvesting. But peace, Marcus had learned over decades of military service, was often just the calm before a very different kind of storm. The first sign of trouble came as a shadow passing over the sun. Marcus looked up from his work to see the sleek, predatory outline of a Zephyrian warship breaking through the cloud cover. The vessel was beautiful in its own terrifying way, all smooth curves and gleaming metal that seemed to bend light around its edges. Most humans would have frozen in terror at the sight. Marcus simply set down his tools and walked calmly toward his farmhouse. Sarah, he called to his neighbor, a young woman who had been hanging laundry on the line between their properties. Take your children and head for the caves. Now. Sarah Chun had been a military communications officer before settling on New Eden. She recognized the tone in Marcus's voice and didn't waste time asking questions. Within minutes, she was running toward the forest with her 2 young sons, along with dozens of other colonists who had heard Marcus's warning spread through their emergency network. The Zephyrian landing craft touched down in the center of the settlement with barely a whisper. These aliens had perfected the art of silent predation over thousands of years, Marcus knew. They were hunters by nature and instinct, with reflexes that could track a target moving at superhuman speeds and weapons that could cut through military-grade armor like paper. They were also about to learn their first lesson about human beings. Marcus waited on his front porch as the aliens emerged from their ships. Zephyrian stood nearly 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs that ended in razor-sharp claws and faces that looked like someone had crossed a mantis with a wolf. Their skin shifted colors depending on their mood and the environment, currently displaying the deep purples and blacks of focused hunters. The lead, Zephyrian, approached Marcus's house with the confident stride of a predator that had never encountered serious resistance. His skin bore the intricate scarification that marked him as a senior raid leader, and his equipment was clearly top-tier military hardware. Human, the alien said in accented but clear English, his voice carrying the harsh clicking undertones of a species. You will come with us. Your settlement is now under Zephyrian control. Marcus rocked slowly in his chair, studying the alien with calm, gray eyes. You know, son, I've been expecting you for quite some time. The Zephyrian's head tilted slightly, a gesture that Marcus recognized as confusion. Prey animals weren't supposed to respond this way. They were supposed to run or beg or fight uselessly against superior forces. They weren't supposed to sit calmly on their porches as if they'd been waiting for a social visit. You misunderstand the situation, human. We are Zephyrian raiders. We take what we want and eliminate resistance. Your people will serve us or die. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. That's quite an approach you've got there. Very direct. But tell me something, young predator. In all your years of hunting, have you ever encountered prey that wanted to be caught? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Around them, other Zephyrian soldiers had spread out through the settlement, searching houses and securing the area. Marcus could see them moving with efficient, practiced coordination. These weren't random pirates or desperate scavengers. This was a professional military unit conducting a textbook occupation, which made what Marcus was about to do all the more interesting. Prey does not want to be caught, the lead Zephyrian replied, though his tone had become less certain. That is not the nature of the hunt. Marcus stood slowly, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. Well now, that's where you might be wrong. You see, I've spent most of my life studying predators. Big ones, small ones, alien ones, human ones. And you know what I learned? The most dangerous prey isn't the kind that runs away. He walked down the steps of his porch, and despite every instinct screaming at them to maintain their defensive positions, The Zephyrian soldiers found themselves stepping back slightly. There was something about this old human's confidence that was deeply unsettling. The most dangerous prey, Marcus continued conversationally, is the kind that walks right up to the predator and says, "Go ahead, take your best shot." The raid leader's claws extended slightly, an involuntary response to what his brain was interpreting as a threat display. But Marcus wasn't acting threatening. He was acting like someone who held all the cards in a game where the Zephyrians didn't even know the rules. "You speak strangely for prey," the alien said. "What are you called, human?" Marcus smiled, and there was something in that expression that made the Zephyrian skin shift to the pale greens of uncertainty. "Most folks around here just call me Shepherd. But back in my younger days, I had a different title. I was the man who trained Earth's first generation of deep space warriors." He paused to let that sink in before continuing. "I was the one who taught human soldiers how to fight things like you." The revelation hit the Zephyrian squad like a physical blow. They had studied human military capabilities, of course. Any successful predator species learned about their prey's defenses. But the humans had been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries, and their military traditions were supposedly crude and primitive compared to species that had been perfecting warfare for millennia. Yet something about this old man's calm confidence suggested that the Zephyrians might have seriously underestimated their opponents. "Impossible," the raid leader said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "Humans are a young species. Your military has no significant victories against established galactic powers." Marcus chuckled, a sound that somehow managed to be both friendly and deeply ominous. "Son, you're thinking like a predator from a world where strength and speed determine everything. But humans didn't evolve on a world like that. We had to get creative." He gestured toward the empty settlement around them. "For instance, take this little situation. You've just conquered a peaceful farming colony, captured one old man, and scattered a bunch of families into the wilderness. Looks like a textbook successful raid, doesn't it?" The Zephyrian's skin began shifting through rapid color changes as his mind raced to understand what the human was implying. "What are you suggesting?" Marcus's smile widened. "I'm suggesting that you've just walked into the first lesson I taught every human warrior who ever served under me. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is to let your enemy think they've already won." Around them, the other Zephyrian soldiers were becoming increasingly agitated. Their natural hunting instincts were telling them that something was very wrong with the situation, but their training insisted that they had overwhelming tactical superiority. The raid leader made a decision. "Enough games, human. You will come with us for interrogation. If you have valuable intelligence about human military capabilities, it will be extracted." Marcus nodded agreeably. "Of course. But before we go, let me ask you something. How many Zephyrian raiding fleets are currently operating in this sector?" The question was so unexpected that the alien answered automatically. 17 battle groups are conducting operations across 43 systems. 17, Marcus repeated thoughtfully. "And how many of those fleets do you think have encountered resistance that required them to call for backup in the past 6 months?" The Zephyrian's expression grew more confused. "None. We are apex predators. We do not require assistance to handle prey species." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. You see, young hunter, that kind of thinking is what I like to call predator blindness. You're so used to being at the top of the food chain that you can't imagine anything challenging your position." He started walking toward the Zephyrian landing craft, moving with the unhurried pace of someone taking a pleasant stroll. The aliens fell into formation around him, still confused by his behavior, but maintaining their professional discipline. "Let me tell you a story," Marcus said as they walked. 40 years ago, when humans first started expanding beyond our home system, we encountered a species called the Vorthan Empire. They were convinced that humans were just another primitive species ripe for conquest. The Zephyrian raid leader found himself listening despite his better judgment. There was something hypnotic about the old human's voice, And the story he was telling had the ring of historical truth. The Vorthans had been dominating their sector of space for over 10,000 years, Marcus continued. They had better technology, superior numbers, and military traditions that stretch back to before human civilization even existed. By every logical measure, they should have crushed us without breaking a sweat. They reached the landing craft, but Marcus paused before boarding. Want to know what happened to the Vorthan Empire? The Zephyrian couldn't help himself. What happened? Marcus's smile took on a different quality, something that spoke of hard-won knowledge and old victories. They learned the first rule of fighting humans. We don't play by anyone else's rules. As they boarded the ship, the raid leader found himself wondering if capturing this old human had been as easy as it seemed. Something about Marcus Holloway suggested that appearances could be very deceiving and that the real hunt was just beginning. The ship lifted off, carrying its unusual prisoner toward a rendezvous with the main Zephyrian fleet. But as Marcus settled into his restraints with the calm satisfaction of someone whose day was going exactly according to plan, he reflected on a lesson he had learned long ago in his training days. The most successful predators weren't the ones with the sharpest claws or the fastest reflexes. They were the ones who understood that sometimes the hunter and the hunted could change places without either side realizing it until it was far too late. The old shepherd was about to teach an entire alien species what it really meant to deal with humanity. Lessons in Fear the Command deck of the Zephyrian warship Voidstalker was a testament to thousands of years of refined predatory evolution. Every surface curved and flowed like the inside of some great hunting beast, with displays that responded to the slightest gesture and weapon systems that could track and eliminate targets across entire star systems. It was designed to intimidate, to remind anyone who stood within it that they were in the presence of apex predators. Marcus Holloway stood in the center of it all, his hands cuffed behind his back with restraints that could hold a creature 10 times his strength, and looked remarkably unimpressed. Commander Thrax circled around the old human with the patient grace of a predator sizing up its prey. Thrax was larger than the raid leader who had captured Marcus, standing nearly 9 feet tall with skin that displayed the deep crimson and gold patterns of supreme authority. Scars from 100 battles marked his hide, and his claws had been enhanced with molecular edge technology that could cut through any known material. So, Thrax said, his voice a rumbling bass that made the air itself vibrate, "You are the human who claims to have trained warriors to fight my kind." Marcus tilted his head slightly, studying the Zephyrian commander with the clinical interest of someone evaluating a particularly interesting specimen. "Not your kind specifically, son, but creatures that think like you do. Predators who believe that physical superiority is the only thing that matters in a fight." The bridge fell silent except for the subtle hum of the ship's systems. Every Zephyrian present could feel the tension in the air, the sense that something fundamental was being challenged. Prey animals weren't supposed to speak to apex predators this way. Thrax's skin shifted to warning colors of bright orange and black. "You will show proper respect, human, or I will demonstrate why Zephyrians have ruled this sector for 3 millennia." Marcus chuckled, a sound that somehow managed to echo in the curved space of the command deck. 3 millennia of ruling through fear and force. That's impressive, but let me ask you something, Commander. In all that time, how many species have you actually wiped out completely? The question caught Thrax off guard. "What?" "Simple question," Marcus replied. "Your predators, right? Top of the food chain? So, when you encounter a species that resists you, what do? Hunt them to extinction." Thrax's claws extended slightly. We conquer them. Force them to submit. Those who cannot adapt serve those who can." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "That's what I thought. You see, Commander, that's the difference between a true apex predator and something that just thinks it is. Real apex predators understand that you don't destroy your prey. You manage it." He began walking slowly around the command deck, ignoring the way every Zephyrian present tensed at his movement. Despite being restrained and surrounded by creatures that could kill him in seconds, Marcus moved like he owned the space. When I was training the first generation of human deep space forces, Marcus continued, I had to teach them about different types of predators. There are hunters who kill individual targets. There are pack predators who coordinate to bring down larger prey. And then there are apex predators who understand that the real skill isn't in killing. It's in controlling entire ecosystems. Thrax followed Marcus's movement, with his eyes trying to understand what the human was doing. You speak in riddles, old man. What does this have to do with military strategy? Marcus stopped walking and turned to face the commander directly. Everything. You see, when humans first encountered hostile alien species, we made a discovery that changed how we think about warfare. We learned that most conquering species aren't actually very good at conquest. The bridge crew exchanged glances, their skin patterns showing varying degrees of confusion and growing unease. Marcus's confidence was starting to affect them in ways they couldn't quite understand. Explain, Thrax demanded. Marcus smiled. Take your current operation, for instance. 17 fleets, conducting raids across 43 systems. Classic predator behavior. Spread out, hit weak targets, take what you need and move on. It's efficient, it's low risk, and it maintains your reputation as something to be feared. He paused, letting his words sink in. It's also exactly what I would expect from a species that's forgotten how to actually win wars. The command deck erupted in angry clicking and color changes as the Zephyrian crew reacted to what they perceived as an insult. But Thrax raised a clawed hand for silence, his own skin displaying the deep purples of intense thought. Continue, the commander said, quietly. Marcus nodded approvingly. See, that's the first sign of a real predator. You're willing to listen, even when you don't like what you're hearing. Most of your crew here wants to tear me apart for questioning your methods, but you want to understand what I'm getting at. He gestured toward the tactical displays that showed the positions of Zephyrian forces throughout the sector. Your raids are successful because you're hitting isolated colonies and merchant vessels, targets that can't fight back effectively. But what happens when you encounter serious resistance? Thrax's expression grew thoughtful. We withdraw and seek easier prey. Exactly, Marcus said. And that, Commander, is why you'll never be more than very successful pirates instead of true conquerors. You avoid real fights. The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Every instinct the Zephyrians possessed was screaming at them to respond with violence, but something about Marcus's calm delivery made them hesitate. Humans are different, Marcus continued. When we encounter something that outclasses us, we don't retreat and look for easier targets. We study it, we adapt to it, and then we figure out how to beat it. He walked over to one of the tactical displays, somehow managing to manipulate the controls despite his restraints. The display changed to show detailed analysis of Zephyrian military formations and tactics. For instance, Marcus said, highlighting specific elements of the data, your standard raiding formation uses a triangular approach pattern with the command ship maintaining position at the back of the formation. It's designed to maximize firepower while minimizing risk to leadership. Thrax's skin shifted to surprised yellows and greens. The tactical analysis was accurate down to the smallest details, information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. How do you know this? The commander demanded. That Marcus's smile took on a different quality. Because, Commander, I helped design the simulations that trained human forces to fight exactly this type of formation. Every tactic you use, every strategic doctrine in your military manuals, every secret technique your people employ. Humans have been studying and preparing counters for all of it. The bridge fell completely silent as the implications of this revelation hit home. If the humans had been studying Zephyrian tactics for decades, if they had been preparing specifically to fight against Zephyrian forces, you see, Marcus continued, while your people have been conducting raids and maintaining your reputation as feared predators, humans have been doing what humans do best. We've been learning. He manipulated the display again, showing shipping routes and colony locations throughout the sector. Every one of your raids has been monitored. Every tactical innovation your forces have developed has been analyzed and cataloged. Every weakness in your formations has been identified and exploited. Thrax found his voice, though it came out as more of a whisper. Why? Why would humans spend so much effort studying us if you never intended to fight? Marcus turned to face the commander, and for the first time since being brought aboard the ship, his expression grew completely serious. Who says we never intended to fight? The question hit the Zephyrian crew like a physical blow. Around the bridge, skin colors shifted rapidly through cycles of fear, anger, and confusion as the implications became clear. You think this is a coincidence? Marcus asked, gesturing at his own presence on the ship. An old human farm. Are just happening to be on a colony that your forces decided to raid? A man with knowledge of your military secrets just sitting on his porch waiting to be captured? Thrax's claws extended fully, but his voice was steady. What are you saying? Marcus's smile returned, but now it carried an edge that made even apex predators nervous. I'm saying, Commander, that sometimes the best way to study a predator is to let it think it's caught prey. The command deck systems suddenly flickered, displays showing momentary static before returning to normal. It lasted only a few seconds, but every Zephyrian present recognized the signature of external scanning. What was that? Thrax demanded. Marcus looked up at the ceiling as if he could see through the hull of the ship. That young predator was your first lesson in fighting humans. We don't just study our enemies. We prepare the battlefield. Before anyone could respond, alerts began sounding throughout the ship. The tactical displays lit up with new contacts, dozens of them appearing at the edge of sensor range with energy signatures that didn't match any known vessel type. Impossible, Thrax breathed, staring at the readings. Our sensors show empty space. These contacts cannot exist. Marcus nodded approvingly. Stealth technology. Another one of those human innovations your intelligence reports probably dismissed as primitive compared to Zephyrian capabilities. The bridge erupted in activity as crew members rushed to their stations, trying to make sense of what their instruments were telling them. The impossible contacts were holding position just outside the fleet's defensive perimeter, making no aggressive moves, but clearly indicating that the Zephyrians were surrounded. You planned this, Thrax said, his voice carrying a mix of admiration and fury. This entire capture was arranged. Marcus shrugged. I prefer to think of it as an educational opportunity. You see, Commander, there's something about human nature that most predator species never understand. We don't just fight to win individual battles. We fight to teach lessons. He gestured toward the tactical display showing the mysterious contacts. Right now, your crew is trying to figure out how many ships are out there, what kind of weapons they're carrying, and whether they represent a threat to your fleet. Thrax studied the readings, his strategic mind working through the possibilities. The energy signatures are inconsistent with known human military vessels. That's because they're not military vessels, Marcus explained. Some of them are civilian ships with modified engines. Others are automated probes designed to mimic larger contacts. A few are actually just sensor ghosts created by equipment that doesn't officially exist. The revelation was almost worse than if the contacts had been a massive enemy fleet. It meant that humans had surrounded and effectively neutralized a Zephyrian battle group using technology and tactics that shouldn't have been possible. But here's the real lesson, Marcus continued. Those ships out there, they're not here to attack you. They're here to make sure you listen to what I have to say. Thrax's skin displayed the deep blues of profound uncertainty. What do you want? Marcus's expression grew serious again. I want to teach you something that could save your entire species, Commander. You see, while you've been perfecting the art of raiding isolated colonies, something much bigger has been happening in this galaxy. He manipulated the display once more, bringing up star charts that showed movement patterns beyond the current sector. There are predators out there that make Zephyrians look like prey animals, and they're coming this way. The bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed this information. Finally, Thrax spoke. And you believe humans can help us face this threat? Marcus smiled. Commander, I don't think humans can help you. I know we can, because, unlike you, we've been preparing for this fight for decades. The only question is whether you're smart enough to accept the help. As alarms continued to sound throughout the Zephyrian fleet, Marcus reflected that this was exactly how his best training sessions had always begun. First, you had to get your students' attention. Then, you had to make them realize how much they didn't know. The real education was about to begin. The briefing room fell silent as Thrax considered the proposal. His skin shifted through the deep purples of intense concentration, and Marcus could practically see the commander's strategic mind working through all the implications. "You're asking my people to abandon 3 millennia of independence," Thrax said, finally, "to trust species we viewed as prey or competitors." Marcus leaned forward. "No, Commander. I'm asking you to evolve. The same way your ancestors evolved from simple predators into starfaring civilization builders. The galaxy is changing, and species that can't adapt to new realities don't survive." Captain Rodriguez activated another display showing tactical simulations. These are projections based on what happens if each species fights the Devourers individually using current military doctrines. The results were sobering. Every simulation showed the same outcome: complete defeat within months of first contact. And these, Dr. Chen added, bringing up new simulations, show projected outcomes with coordinated defense protocols. The difference was startling. Coordinated forces using combined tactics showed survival rates approaching 60%, with some scenarios indicating potential victory. Thrax studied the data carefully. These projections assume perfect cooperation between species that have been competitors for centuries. True, Admiral Curtis acknowledged, which is why the actual coordination protocols account for cultural differences, competing interests, and the inevitable friction between allied forces. She highlighted specific elements of the battle plans. Zephyrian forces would operate as hunter-killer groups, using your superior speed and coordination to target Devourer support vessels. Vegan scientific ships would provide technological support and real-time tactical analysis. Centauri trade networks would handle logistics and supply coordination. And humans? Thrax asked. Marcus smiled. "We do what we do best, Commander. We adapt, improvise, and hold everything together when the plan inevitably starts falling apart." The Zephyrian commander was quiet for another long moment. Then his skin began shifting to the golds and silvers of resolution. "My personal authority extends only to the forces under my direct command. Any sector-wide alliance would require approval from the Confederation Council." "We understand," Admiral Curtis said, "which is why we're prepared to offer a demonstration of what this alliance could accomplish." She manipulated the tactical display to show current positions of various fleets throughout the sector. The Vegan Science Collective has agreed to a joint research initiative studying Devourer technology recovered from attack sites. The Centauri Federation is already implementing new trade protocols designed to support military cooperation. 3 Outer Rim systems have requested human advisors to help upgrade their defensive capabilities. "You're showing them that the alliance is already working," Thrax observed. Marcus nodded. "Nothing convinces predators like success, and nothing builds trust like shared victory." Dr. Chen activated her cultural analysis displays. "We've also prepared comprehensive briefings on how to approach each species' leadership structures. Zephyrians respect demonstrated capability and direct challenge. Vegans prefer scientific evidence and logical argument. Centauris respond to economic incentives and long-term strategic thinking." "You've studied us very thoroughly," Thrax said, though his tone suggested respect rather than offense. "Knowledge is the foundation of all successful cooperation," Marcus replied. "You can't work with someone effectively if you don't understand how they think." Captain Rodriguez brought up the final set of displays. "The question now, Commander, is whether you're willing to help us test these cooperation protocols under controlled conditions before the real threat arrives." "What kind of test?" Thrax asked. Admiral Curtis smiled. "We've identified a Devourer scout probe operating in the Kepler 438 system. It's been conducting deep scans of planetary defenses and cataloging military capabilities. Current intelligence suggests it's preparing to transmit its findings back to the main force. The implications were immediately clear to Thrax's tactical mind. You want to intercept it. More than that, Marcus said, we want to capture it intact, study its technology, and use what we learned to improve our defensive capabilities. But it will require coordinated action between human stealth technology, Zephyrian hunting tactics, and support from other allied forces. Thrax's skin shifted to the bright patterns of excitement and challenge. A hunt unlike any in Zephyrian history. Exactly, Marcus agreed. And if we succeed, it proves that the alliance concept works. If we fail, we learn what doesn't work and adjust our approach. Thrax finished. Very human thinking. Admiral Curtis stood. We can give you time to consult with your superior's commander. But the window for intercepting the probe is closing rapidly. Thrax was silent for a moment, then his skin shifted to the deep reds and golds of command decision. No consultation required. My forces are at your disposal for this operation. Marcus felt a wave of satisfaction wash over him. This was exactly the kind of breakthrough that made all the planning and preparation worthwhile. Outstanding, he said. Then let's start planning a hunt that's going to change the balance of power. In this galaxy, as the mixed human and Zephyrian planning session began in earnest, Marcus reflected on how far they'd all come from that morning on New Eden. What had started as a simple raid on a farming colony had evolved into the first real test of interspecies cooperation against an existential threat. The old shepherd was about to find out if the lessons he'd been teaching for decades would work on a galactic scale. But as he watched Zephyrian tactical specialists working alongside human strategists, sharing information and building trust through shared purpose, Marcus felt confident that they were on the right track. The real test would come when they faced the Devourer probe. But for the first time since the threat had been identified, Marcus believed they might actually have a chance of winning. The hunt for the future of the galaxy was about to begin, and this time the predators and their former prey would be working together. First lesson, the tactical briefing room aboard the Voidstalker had been hastily converted into a meeting space that could accommodate both human and Zephyrian physiologies. Marcus sat across from Commander Thrax, his restraints finally removed, while holographic displays showed detailed intelligence briefings that made the Zephyrian skin shift through colors of amazement and growing concern. 37 confirmed incursions along the galactic rim, Marcus was saying, highlighting points on a three-dimensional star map, each one following the same pattern. Complete communication blackouts, followed by systematic harvesting of all biological material, then total sterilization of planetary surfaces. Thrax studied the data with the focused intensity of a predator analyzing a new and dangerous threat. The energy signatures you've shown us, they're unlike anything in our databases. What species are we dealing with? Marcus's expression grew grim. We call them the Devourers, though we suspect that's not what they call themselves. They're not like anything we've encountered before. They don't seem to want territory, resources, or conquest in any way we understand it. They just consume. He manipulated the display to show the progression of attacks over time. The pattern suggests they're working their way systematically through the galaxy, testing defenses and cataloging threats before the main force arrives. And you believe this main force is coming here? Thrax asked. Commander, Marcus said quietly, I know it's coming here. Human deep space monitoring networks have been tracking a massive gravitational anomaly moving through dark space for the past 18 months. Whatever it is, it's the size of a small moon, and it's heading directly for this sector. The Zephyrian's claws unconsciously extended as his predator instincts responded to the threat assessment. How long do we have? Marcus checked his datapad. Current projections suggest first contact in approximately 14 months. Maybe less if they accelerate their approach. Thrax was silent for a long moment, processing the implications. Finally, he spoke. You said humans have been preparing for this? What kind of preparations? Marcus smiled, and there was genuine warmth in the expression. Now that, Commander, is where things get interesting. You see, this whole situation, your raid on New Eden, my capture, even this conversation, it's all been part of a much larger plan. The Zephyrian skin shifted to cautious oranges. Explain. Marcus stood and walked to another display panel, calling up files that showed detailed analyses of multiple alien species throughout the sector. When humans first realized what was coming, we had a choice. We could try to face it alone, or we could do what humans do best, build alliances. But most species in this sector view humans as primitive newcomers, Thrax pointed out. Why would they ally with us against an existential threat? Because, Marcus said, most species think like you do. They think in terms of individual strength, territorial dominance, and direct confrontation. The Devourers are counting on exactly that kind of thinking. He highlighted several tactical analyses on the display. Every species they've encountered so far has tried to fight them using conventional military doctrine. Fortified positions, superior firepower, coordinated fleet actions. All of it has failed. Thrax studied the data. What makes you think human tactics would be any different? Marcus's smile widened. Because humans don't just think about winning battles, Commander. We think about winning wars that haven't been fought yet. He activated another series of displays showing detailed intelligence on Zephyrian, Vegan, Centauri, and dozens of other species throughout the sector. For the past 5 years, human agents have been infiltrating and studying every major civilization in this part of the galaxy, not to conquer or dominate, but to understand how each species fights and reacts under pressure. The revelation hit Thrax like a physical blow. You've been manipulating us all. Not manipulating, Marcus corrected. Preparing. Every species has strengths that could be crucial in fighting the Devourers. Zephyrian hunting instincts and pack coordination. Vegan technological innovation. Centauri strategic planning. The trick is getting everyone to work together instead of against each other. He gestured toward the star map showing the approaching threat. The Devourers succeed because they force their enemies to fight as individuals. Isolated, each species is vulnerable. But combined, using each other's strengths to cover weaknesses, you create something greater than the sum of its parts, Thrax finished, understanding dawning in his large predatory eyes. Marcus nodded approvingly. Now you're thinking like a human. The ship's communication system chimed, indicating an incoming priority message. Thrax activated the display, and the image of the raid leader who had originally captured Marcus appeared. Commander, the subordinate reported, we've received surrender signals from the remaining human contacts. They're requesting permission to board and negotiate. Thrax looked at Marcus questioningly. The old human shrugged. Might as well let them aboard. This is where things get really interesting. 20 minutes later, the briefing room had been expanded to accommodate 3 additional humans who had arrived on a shuttle that seemed far too advanced for civilian colonists. Marcus made introductions with the casual air of someone conducting a business meeting. Commander Thrax, I'd like you to meet Dr. Sarah Chun, our xenobiologist and cultural specialist, Captain James Rodriguez, who handles tactical coordination, and Admiral Helen Curtis, who commands the Sector Defense Initiative. Thrax's skin displayed rapid color changes as he processed this information. Admiral, you brought a human fleet commander. Admiral Curtis, a stern woman in her 50s with the bearing of someone accustomed to command, smiled slightly. Actually, Commander, I've been in this sector for 3 years. We've had monitoring stations on 17 different worlds, including 3 that your forces have raided. The Zephyrian commander looked between the humans, understanding beginning to crystallize. The entire farming colony was a cover operation. Not exactly, Marcus interjected. The colony is real, and those families you saw really do live there. But it's also served as a coordination point for something much larger. Dr. Chin activated her own set of displays, showing detailed cultural and psychological profiles of multiple species. The Devourer threat gave us an opportunity to test something that humans have suspected for decades. Most interstellar conflicts arise not from irreconcilable differences, but from simple failures of communication and understanding. Your raid on New Eden wasn't just an opportunity to study Zephyrian tactics, Captain Rodriguez added. It was a chance to demonstrate that even supposed enemies can find common ground when faced with an existential threat. Admiral Curtis pulled up strategic displays showing fleet positions throughout the sector. Over the past year, we've conducted similar educational exercises with the Vegan Science Collective, the Centauri Trade Federation, and the Outer Rim Mining Consortiums. Each contact was designed to demonstrate human capabilities while identifying potential areas of cooperation. Thrax was silent for several minutes, his skin cycling through complex patterns as he absorbed the full scope of what the humans had accomplished. Finally, he spoke. You've been orchestrating a sector-wide alliance without any of us realizing it. Marcus nodded, guilty as charged, but consider the alternative, Commander. Without this approach, when the Devourers arrive, they'll face a dozen different species fighting separately, each one using tactics and strategies that have already proven ineffective. Instead, Admiral Curtis continued, we're offering the possibility of a coordinated defense that combines the best capabilities of every major civilization in the sector. Thrax studied the strategic displays, his predator's mind working through the implications. What do you need from the Zephyrian Confederation,